The galaxy's fall. The galaxy was in chaos. Alien forces, powerful and ruthless, had conquered everything in their path. From distant planets to entire star systems, nothing was safe. Species that once flourished now lived in fear. Their cities were destroyed, their leaders captured, and their people enslaved. It seemed like the galaxy had lost all hope. The alien empire, known as the Zorath, was known for their overwhelming strength. They had advanced technology, vast fleets of warships, and an army of creatures designed to crush anyone who opposed them. No one had been able to stop them. In the last few years, they had wiped out planet after planet, leaving nothing behind but ruins. The Zorath had destroyed everyone who dared to stand against them, and no one thought there was a chance of winning. And a once thriving planet in the center of the galaxy, the Zorath gathered in their war room. The High Commanders sat at a massive table, each one a symbol of the might of their empire. Their faces were cold and emotionless as they discussed their victory over yet another planet. "Another victory," one of the commanders said with a smug grin. "The humans never stood a chance. The rest of the galaxy will soon fall like them." The room was filled with nods of agreement. The Zorath had already destroyed most of the powerful species in the galaxy. Only a few small, weak planets remained. There were rumors of some resistance movements, but they were insignificant. The Zorath believed they were unstoppable. The leader of the Zorath, General Kreth, stood up. He was tall, his dark armor gleaming in the dim light. "We have won. The galaxy is ours. There is nothing left to challenge us." He spoke with authority, and the others nodded once again, their faces full of confidence. For the Zorath, victory was certain. They believed no one could stop them. But little did they know, something was stirring in the background. While the galaxy seemed quiet, a small planet on the edge of known space was far from quiet. It was a planet many had forgotten, hidden away from the Zorath's gaze. The humans, once thought to be weak and insignificant, were preparing. The humans had been pushed to the brink. Their planet was not as advanced as the great empires the Zorath had crushed, but they had something those empires didn't: determination. For years they had lived in fear, hiding from the alien forces. But in the shadows, a group of human leaders had been quietly building an army. In secret labs, scientists worked day and night, developing new technologies. They studied the Zorath, learning their weaknesses, understanding their tactics. They knew the odds were stacked against them, but they also knew one thing: they would never give up. The humans had something the Zorath didn't understand: the will to fight for freedom. On Earth, a group of military leaders sat in a hidden command center deep beneath the surface. They had been watching the Zorath for years, waiting for the right moment. General Marcus, a seasoned leader with years of experience, looked at the map of the galaxy spread before him. The alien fleet had taken over most of the galaxy, and only a few pockets of resistance remained. Earth had been left alone for now, but that wouldn't last. "It's time," General Marcus said, his voice steady but filled with determination. "We can't wait any longer. The Zorath think we're weak. They think we're finished, but we're not." His words echoed in the silent room. The leaders around him nodded, knowing what needed to be done. They had no choice now. It was time to make their move. The humans would not go quietly into the dark. They would fight. But first, they needed to show the Zorath that they were not to be underestimated. A small, quiet signal was sent out into the galaxy, a simple message meant to reach the right ears. It was a message of defiance, a message that said, "We are still here." The signal was faint, just a whisper in the vastness of space. The Zorath would ignore it at first. After all, who would listen to a weak planet like Earth? Who would think that a species on the brink of extinction could fight back? But even as the Zorath commanders celebrated their victory, that small message was out there. The galaxy was theirs, yes, but something deep within them stirred. Something was changing. The Zorath didn't know it yet, but they had made a mistake. They had underestimated humanity, and that was a mistake they would soon regret. The galaxy was in the grip of a terrifying silence, one that had settled over countless worlds. The alien empire, the Zorath, had claimed victory after victory, pushing all other species to the brink of extinction. The once thriving civilizations, the proud fleets of powerful races, had crumbled beneath their feet. Now, only a few tiny pockets of resistance remained, hiding in fear, praying that the invaders would ignore them. For the Zorath, nothing seemed like it could go wrong. They had conquered entire star systems with ease. They had shattered planets, capturing their resources and enslaving their populations. The galaxy was theirs, and every leader, every general, every warrior believed that the final piece of the puzzle was almost complete. There was no one left to challenge them. Yet even in this moment of apparent victory, the Zorath felt uneasy. There was a sense that something was missing, something they couldn't quite place. The last few days had been peaceful, too peaceful. No new worlds had fallen into their grasp, no new signals of resistance had popped up. It was as if everything was waiting, holding its breath. At the Zorath War Command Center, the High Commanders gathered. The room, dimly lit by the glow of distant stars, was filled with an eerie tension. General Kreth, the leader of their forces, stood at the head of the table, his cold eyes staring down at the star map that stretched across the table. He was tall and strong, a being made for battle. His mind was sharp, and his army had never known defeat. But even he could sense something was off. "What is this quiet?" Kreth muttered to himself, his fingers tapping on the surface of the map. "We should have taken more planets by now." "Perhaps it is just a pause," one of his commanders said, trying to calm him. "The resistance is weak. Soon they will give in, just like all the others." But Kreth wasn't convinced. Something had changed. He had heard rumors from his scouts, talk of strange signals, of communications that didn't match anything they had encountered before. It wasn't much, just whispers on the wind, but Kreth's instincts told him that it was more than coincidence. "Check the communications," he ordered, his voice low and filled with suspicion. "There's something out there we're missing, something we're not seeing." The room fell silent as a group of officers worked quickly to analyze the data. The air was thick with anticipation as their fingers flew across their consoles. Then one of the technicians looked up, her face pale. "There's a signal," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's coming from a distant, unknown system. The signal is weak, but it's growing stronger. We don't know where it's coming from." Kreth stood up suddenly, his eyes narrowing. "Where?" The technician pointed at a small point on the galaxy map. A speck of light, barely noticeable in the vastness of space. The human homeworld, Earth. The room fell deathly silent. Earth. The humans had always been seen as insignificant, primitive, weak. They had never been a real threat, not even worth the Zorath's attention. They had simply been left alone as the Empire focused on larger, more important conquests. But now this tiny planet was sending out a signal. For the first time in years, Kreth felt a flicker of doubt. He stared at the map, his mind racing. Could it be true? Could humanity have developed something that could pose a threat to the mighty Zorath? "We need to investigate this," Kreth ordered. "Send a fleet to Earth. If this is just a weak signal, it will be easy to crush. But if there's more to it, we'll deal with it before it becomes a problem." The Zorath's fleet mobilized quickly, their massive warships racing through the stars toward Earth. As they traveled through space, Kreth's mind raced. He couldn't ignore the feeling that this was more than just a coincidence. The humans were sending a message, but what did it mean? Meanwhile, on Earth, things were happening that the Zorath could never have predicted. The humans were not sitting idle. For years, they had been watching the galaxy burn, quietly preparing for the day they would be forced to fight back. While the Zorath had assumed that Earth was nothing but a forgotten, powerless world, the humans had been building, learning, and watching. They had been developing new technology, not just to survive, but to defend themselves. At a secret command center hidden deep beneath the Earth's surface, a small group of military leaders and scientists gathered around a map of the galaxy. They had received the strange signal, and their analysis confirmed their worst fears. The Zorath had not forgotten Earth. They were coming. "We have no time," General Marcus said, his voice filled with urgency. "The Zorath think we're weak. They think we don't matter. But they're wrong. We'll show them that humans don't surrender." The team was small but determined. They had worked in secret for years, developing technology that could match the Zorath's power. But time was running out. The invasion was inevitable. "This is our moment," Marcus continued. "We can't wait for them to come to us. We have to act now, before they destroy everything we've built." In the quiet moments that followed, a single message was sent into the vastness of space, a simple, clear message. "We are still here." The Zorath fleet moved closer to Earth, unaware of what awaited them. The humans had made their first move, and this time, they would not go down without a fight. As the Zorath fleet made its way toward Earth, the humans on the small planet were preparing for a fight they knew would be unlike anything they had ever faced. General Marcus stood in front of a large screen, watching the star map with a stern look on his face. Earth was no longer just a planet on the edge of the galaxy. It was now a target that the Zorath intended to destroy. But what the Melee Zorath didn't realize was that the humans had already made their preparations. It wasn't just their technology that had been improving over the years. It was their spirit, their unity, and their unwavering will to protect their home. They knew they couldn't compete with the Zorath's raw power head-to-head, but they didn't plan to fight them in the same way. For years, Earth had lived in the shadows of the galaxy, unnoticed and underestimated. The Zorath had assumed the humans would never pose a threat, and they had been left alone while the rest of the galaxy fell into the hands of the invaders. But the humans had been watching. They had been learning. Every battle the Zorath fought, every world they conquered, was studied in secret. Earth had been preparing, building, and getting ready for the moment when they would finally make their stand. Now, that moment had arrived. The human resistance was not a large army. It was a group of brilliant minds, soldiers, engineers, and scientists who had come together for one purpose: to defend their planet. They had developed new technologies that could disrupt the Zorath's massive warships and fleets. They had created weapons that would make the aliens question their superiority. "We've got one shot at this," General Marcus said to his team, his voice calm but filled with determination. "We can't afford to fail. The Zorath will not. Go easy on us." The group of commanders nodded in agreement. They knew what was at stake, but they also knew something else: that they were not alone in this fight. Across the world, people from all walks of life had come together. The human spirit was something the Zorath had never understood, and that perhaps would be the key to their victory. While the humans prepared their defenses, the Zorath fleet drew closer. Their ships, massive and imposing, cut through space with ease, leaving behind trails of stardust. Kreth, the Zorath general, stood at the head of his command center, his eyes focused on the coordinates that brought him closer to Earth. "Soon," Kreth murmured, "we will crush them like all the others." He was certain. The humans were nothing but a small, insignificant race. The Zorath's advanced weapons would obliterate them in seconds. But even Kreth couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The signal from Earth, though faint, had caught his attention. It was a sign of defiance, something the humans had never shown before. The fleet arrived in Earth's orbit. It was a stunning sight, the ships looming over the planet, like giants. There was no fear on the Zorath side. They knew they had the upper hand. It was only a matter of time before Earth fell, but the humans weren't waiting to be crushed. The first wave of human defenses activated, and suddenly, the Zorath fleet was thrown into disarray. A barrage of missiles, powerful and precise, shot out from Earth's surface, striking the lead ship in the fleet. The Zorath had expected some kind of resistance, but nothing like this. The missiles didn't destroy the ship, but they crippled it, leaving it struggling to stay in orbit. The aliens had never faced such technology before, technology that made no sense to them. Kreth's eyes widened as his ship shook. The humans were fighting back. "Reinforce the shields," He shouted to his officers, "Prepare to return fire." But before the Zorath could retaliate, the humans launched another surprise attack, this time using advanced drones designed to disable the alien fleet's communication systems. In mere moments, the Zorath found themselves cut off from each other, their ships scattered in confusion. It was a calculated move that allowed the humans to gain a temporary advantage. General Marcus watched the scene unfold on the screen in front of him. His team was working quickly, sending waves of attacks to target the weakest points in the Zorath's defenses. It wasn't about destroying them outright. The humans knew they couldn't match the alien fleet's size or power, but they could strike at the heart of the Zorath's coordination. If they could keep the aliens confused and isolated, they might stand a chance. The battle raged on. The Zorath retaliated, firing lasers and energy blasts that cut through the sky. But the humans' technology, advanced shielding, fast-moving fighters, and innovative weapons kept them at bay. The aliens were forced to adjust to the human tactics, and for the first time, they were uncertain. Back on Earth, people watched the battle unfold on their screens, a mixture of fear and hope filling their hearts. The humans weren't just fighting for their planet anymore. They were fighting for the future, for freedom, for the chance to live without the shadow of the Zorath hanging over them. And as the battle continued, one thing became clear to both sides. The humans would not surrender. They would not go quietly into the night. They had fought too hard to survive, and now they were showing the Zorath what true strength meant. The tide was beginning to turn, and the Zorath, who had once thought themselves invincible, were starting to realize that they had underestimated the power of humanity. As the days passed, the battle between the humans and the Zorath grew more intense. What had started as a small, unexpected fight had become a full-scale struggle for survival. The humans, once thought to be helpless, were now showing the galaxy that they were not to be underestimated. And the Zorath, who had believed victory, was assured, were beginning to feel the weight of doubt. General Kreth, the Zorath commander, stood before his command center's large window, gazing out at the planet below. Earth. He could feel his frustration building. His fleet, despite its overwhelming size, was struggling. The human forces had managed to disrupt their communication systems, throwing their coordination into disarray. The Zorath were used to crushing their enemies with force, but now they found themselves fighting on unfamiliar terms. The humans weren't just defending themselves, they were outsmarting the Zorath at every turn. Kreth's mind raced. What was it about the humans that made them so different? Their tactics were unlike anything the Zorath had encountered. They didn't fight the way the other species had. They didn't wait for the Zorath to attack first. No, the humans were proactive. They hit fast and hard, using surprise and unpredictability as their greatest weapons. In one of the Zorath warships, a commander looked at Kreth with concern. "General, we're losing our advantage. Our fleet is scattered, and the humans are striking at us from multiple angles. We need to regroup and rethink our strategy." Kreth's jaw tightened. "We will not retreat. We will crush them, but it seems we must change our approach. If they will not face us directly, we will force them to." At that moment, a new plan was set into motion. The Zorath began to focus their attacks on Earth's major cities, attempting to weaken the humans' resolve by targeting their centers of power. But this time, they underestimated the determination of humanity even more. On Earth, the humans were ready. They had expected the Zorath to escalate their tactics. And while the Zorath thought they were breaking human morale by attacking key locations, they were doing the opposite. The humans' resilience only grew stronger. General Marcus sat in his command center, watching as the images of the cities on Earth flashed across his screen. His eyes were focused, determined. The humans had been through hardship before, but now they were unified in a way they never had been. People from all over the world, different nations, cultures, and backgrounds, had come together to fight the common enemy. "We will not let them destroy us," Marcus said firmly. "They think they can break us with their attacks on our cities. But we are stronger than they realize." The humans had set up secret underground networks, designed to protect vital infrastructure while keeping their most valuable assets hidden. They had also prepared plans to disrupt the Zorath's ability to target these locations. They had developed decoy systems, radar jammers, and advanced technology to confuse the invaders. The Zorath may have been powerful, but they did not know the Earth's terrain and tactics like the humans did. As the Zorath launched their next wave of attacks, they found themselves hitting empty targets. The cities they had aimed for were already empty, their populations safely hidden away in bunkers. The humans had anticipated every move. The Zorath, frustrated, turned their attention to the human military bases, only to find them well guarded and full of surprises. It wasn't just about technology anymore, it was about the human spirit. Every time the Zorath thought they had the upper hand, the humans found a way to turn the tables. It was becoming clear that the humans were not fighting out of fear. They were fighting for something much greater. Hope. Hope for their families. Hope for their future. And hope that they could win against the overwhelming odds. In the heart of the human command center, General Marcus looked over his strategy map once more. The Zorath's attacks had been damaging, but they had also revealed something. There were cracks in the Zorath's armor. The alien forces were powerful, yes, but they were not invincible. The humans were making them bleed, and with each blow the Zorath's confidence started to waver. "We've been hit hard, but we're not finished," Marcus said to his commanders. "The Zorath have underestimated us, and that's their mistake. We will use it to our advantage." The human resistance had learned from each battle, adapting their tactics and refining their strategies. They were no longer just reacting to the Zorath's moves, they were controlling the battlefield. And, as each day passed, the Zorath began to realize that this war would not be as easy as they had thought. The humans were not just surviving, they were thriving in the face of danger. Kreth, standing in his command center, watched as his fleet tried to regain control. His ships were no longer acting as one cohesive force. They were isolated, vulnerable, and constantly attacked from all sides. The Zorath were used to overwhelming their enemies with superior numbers, but now their advantage was slipping away. For the first time in the entire campaign, Kreth felt a sting of uncertainty. His confidence in his empire, in the superiority of the Zorath, was faltering. The humans were showing them something they had never encountered before. A will to fight that no technology, no weapon, no army could ever break. The Zorath had thought that by conquering the galaxy, they had sealed their fate. But now, in the midst of the battle, they were starting to understand something important. The humans were not just fighting to defend their planet. They were fighting to prove that no one, no matter how strong or advanced, could ever truly crush the human spirit. And that was something the Zorath had never prepared for. As the days stretched on, the conflict between the humans and the Zorath intensified, but the balance was beginning to shift. Despite their initial successes, the Zorath could no longer claim control over the situation. The humans, once thought to be insignificant, were proving to be an unexpected and formidable force. What had been a war of numbers and firepower was now becoming a battle of willpower and ingenuity. General Marcus stood before a holographic display, his eyes scanning the tactical overview of the ongoing operations. The humans had suffered losses, certainly, but their resolve had not faltered. If anything, every setback had only fueled their determination to fight harder. The Zorath had underestimated them, thinking that the humans could be easily crushed like the other species they had obliterated across the galaxy. But humanity was proving that it could rise from the ashes, stronger than before. "We've turned the tide, but it's not over yet," Marcus said, his voice steady, yet filled with an unwavering confidence that spread throughout the room. "The Zorath are beginning to realize we won't go down without a fight. They thought we were weak. Now, they know better." His commanders nodded, each one aware of the stakes. They had prepared for this moment for years, had worked tirelessly, developing new technologies and strategies that would surprise even the most advanced alien empire. And now, their plans were beginning to bear fruit. The Zorath, for all their strength, were facing a world they had never expected. Humanity wasn't fighting in the same way the Zorath were used to, and it was making all the difference. Far above Earth, in the cold vastness of space, The Zorath fleet had grown increasingly divided. Their warships, though powerful, lacked the cohesion they once had. The humans' use of electronic warfare had wreaked havoc on their communication systems, isolating their ships and preventing them from coordinating their efforts effectively. They had grown accustomed to being the unstoppable force, and now they found themselves scattered, struggling to adapt to the unpredictability of human tactics. Kreth stood at the helm of his flagship, his fists clenched as he stared at the damage, reports flashing across his screen. His empire, which had once seemed invincible, was faltering. The humans' ability to fight back, to outsmart and outmaneuver his forces was more than just a nuisance. It was a growing threat. "They're not fighting like the others," Kreth muttered, his voice thick with frustration. "They're unpredictable. They don't follow the rules." His officers remained silent, unsure how to respond. For the first time, Kreth felt a sense of vulnerability that he had never experienced. He had always prided himself on his ability to control any situation, to predict the outcome of any battle, but now he found himself constantly surprised by the humans' ability to adapt and overcome. It was as if they were always one step ahead, anticipating his moves before he made them. Despite their setbacks, the Zorath were not ready to concede defeat. Kreth's mind was racing, searching for a way to regain control. He knew they could not afford to lose this war. The entire galaxy was watching. His reputation as a conqueror was at stake. But what the Zorath had failed to recognize was that their greatest enemy was not just their inferior tactics. It was their inability to understand the depth of humanity's will. Back on Earth, the humans were not just preparing for defense. They were preparing for victory. They knew that their resources were limited, that the Zorath still outmatched them in terms of technology and firepower. But what they had that the Zorath could never replicate was unity. The human resistance was no longer just a group of soldiers and scientists. It was an entire planet, united under one common goal. Every country, every community, and every person had contributed to the cause in some way, whether it was by offering shelter to the displaced, sending supplies to the front lines, or developing new technologies to combat the Zorath. It was humanity's collective strength that made them a force to be reckoned with. And now, it was their time to strike back. General Marcus knew that the key to victory lay in one final push. If they could disrupt the Zorath's remaining strongholds, if they could isolate their forces and take out their leadership, the entire empire would begin to crumble. It was a risky plan, but it was the only way forward. "We have to hit them where it hurts," Marcus said, his voice filled with resolve. "The Zorath may have superior technology, but they have weaknesses. If we can expose those weaknesses, we can bring them down." The human fleet, though smaller in size, was ready. The soldiers, pilots, and engineers had all been training for this moment, honing their skills and perfecting their tactics. And now, with their final plan in place, they set their sights on the heart of the Zorath Empire. As the humans launched their attack, the Zorath found themselves in the midst of chaos. The humans' precision strikes, their ability to adapt and respond quickly, kept the Zorath on the defensive. Every time they thought they had the upper hand, the humans managed to regain control, disrupting their operations and cutting off their supply lines. Kreth watched in disbelief as his forces struggled to keep up. The Zorath had always been able to crush any opponent, but this time, they were facing something they couldn't defeat with sheer force. The humans were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their future, for the preservation of their way of life. The Zorath had thought they could break humanity's spirit. They had thought they could extinguish the flame of hope that burned within every human heart. But what they had failed to understand was that it wasn't just about strength or technology. It was about belief. It was about the unyielding conviction that no matter the odds, humanity would never give up. As the battle raged on, it became clear the Zorath were losing. The humans had shown them that the greatest power of all was not found in weapons or fleets, but in the courage to stand up and fight when all seemed lost. And now, the Zorath were realizing that they had underestimated not just the humans, but the very thing that had allowed them to survive for so long, their unbreakable will to live. to endure, and to protect their future. The final chapter of this war was about to unfold. Earth's last stand had come, and it wasn't just about winning. It was about showing the universe that humanity would not be silenced. The Zorath, despite their immense strength, had failed to understand the depth of human resolve. The tide had turned, but the war was far from over. Every corner of the earth had rallied, and the humans were ready to make their final move. General Marcus stood in his command center, a calm and focused expression on his face. The battle had been long, but now they were nearing the final phase of their plan. It was time to deliver the decisive blow. There were still pockets of Zorath resistance scattered across the planet's orbit and in the far reaches of space, but the Zorath were now fractured. Their unity had crumbled and they were running out of options. "This is it," Marcus said, his voice steady as he addressed his commanders. "We've come this far, and we have one chance to end this once and for all. The Zorath thought they could break us, but we've proven them wrong. Now it's time to finish what we started." The room fell silent as everyone knew what this meant. This final assault would not only be a test of their military strength, it would be a test of their belief. The humans had stood strong, fought hard, and adapted to every challenge the Zorath had thrown at them. Now they had the opportunity to bring the fight to the enemy's doorstep, to push them back once and for all. While the humans on Earth made their final preparations, the Zorath fleet was in chaos. Kreth, still reeling from the shock of humanity's resilience, sat in his command room, staring at the tactical map that showed his dwindling forces. His once proud fleet was now fractured, and every move they made seemed to lead to another setback. What had begun as a confident invasion was now a desperate struggle to maintain control. Kreth's officers exchanged worried glances, their confidence shaken. "General, our forces are in disarray. We've lost contact with several of our ships and many of our advanced weapon systems are malfunctioning." Kreth's eyes narrowed as he slammed his fist onto the table. "This is impossible. How are they managing to keep up with us? They should have surrendered by now." For the first time in the campaign, the Zorath leader felt the pressure of doubt. The humans, despite their apparent lack of resources, were fighting in ways that the Zorath had never anticipated. They didn't rely on overwhelming force alone. They used intelligence, creativity, and a relentless spirit to strike back at every turn. It was that spirit, that unbreakable will, that had kept them going through every battle. As the human forces mobilized, there was a renewed sense of purpose. They weren't just defending Earth anymore. They were defending the future of every world, every species, and every civilization that the Zorath had conquered before. They were fighting for freedom, and they had learned over the course of the war that no matter how powerful the enemy seemed, the will to protect what mattered was stronger than any weapon. The final strike against the Zorath would come from every direction. A coordinated assault from Earth, supported by newly developed technology that the Zorath had never even imagined, would target the heart of their operation. The humans had created a weapon, one designed not to destroy, but to disable. It was a signal, a message that humanity would not be cowed. The humans launched their assault, their fleet of smaller, faster ships moving in synchronized patterns. They deployed drones and missiles, disrupting the Zorath's remaining forces and cutting off their escape routes. The Zorath were left scrambling, unsure of where to focus their firepower. They had not expected this level of coordination and ingenuity. On the ground, the people of Earth watched in awe as their forces launched the final offensive. What had once seemed like an impossible dream, victory over the Zorath, was now within reach. People from all walks of life had come together, supporting the military efforts, offering their knowledge and resources to help turn the tide. It wasn't just the soldiers fighting now, it was everyone. Humanity had united, not only to defend their home but to make sure that the mistakes of the past were not repeated. They fought for something larger than themselves. Back in space, Kreth realized too late that the war was slipping from his grasp. His fleet was crumbling, unable to recover from the unexpected human resistance. The Zorath had underestimated the strength of the human spirit, and now it was too late to turn the tide. As his flagship continued to take heavy damage, Kreth faced the bitter truth. The Zorath were not invincible. They had lost. The final push came from all corners of Earth's defenses. With a series of well-timed, coordinated strikes, the human forces neutralized the remaining Zorath warships. They didn't need to destroy them all, just to render them powerless. As the last of the alien fleet fell back, the humans were left, standing victorious, the echo of their triumph resonating across the globe. As the dust settled, General Marcus looked out over the battlefield. The victory wasn't just military, it was something far more profound. The human spirit had endured, had outlasted, and had ultimately overcome an enemy that had sought to erase them. The Zorath had been defeated not by superior firepower, but by the unyielding will of humanity to protect what mattered most. "We did it," Marcus whispered to himself. Though the words were meant for everyone, Earth had not only survived, it had shown the galaxy what true strength was. The humans had proven that no force in the universe could extinguish their flame. And from that day forward, the story of humanity's victory would be told across the stars. It would serve as a reminder to all that no matter how dire the circumstances, no matter how overwhelming the enemy, there was always hope. And in the end, it was that hope that would lead to victory.